exercising good
through periods of time where their strategy hasn't worked.
Where if not a hard stop, you should reevaluate the trades you're in based on time.
That's what we're here for, is to put ourselves in the best success. A trading routine does that, builds that habit, lets you know what to work on, what to reflect on, and what to improve on the next day.
Good afternoon, friends and traders. Welcome to the Limit Up Podcast. I am Dan Hodgman.
And I'm Jack Pelzer. Dan, how's it been?
Oh, it's funny when you have a day off in the week, just how fast the week goes. I feel like I feel like today's only Tuesday, yet it's Thursday. The weekend's almost here.
Yeah, that's kind of like my saving grace here. Plus, producer Holden's out, so I'm kind of doing both ends over here. So hopefully nothing explodes.
Fingers crossed. Well, Jack, we've had a strong week here in the markets. When we talk about equities, we were just looking at the NASDAQ. We were looking at the S&P. S&P's in a pretty interesting area. NASDAQ continues to trend higher on the daily. A lot of opportunity in these markets, but the one that has me most intrigued is this S&P. I know you're going to share the charts. I'd love for people to see this little pattern you're showing here.
Yeah, this is the old mega pattern that's been brewing since way back of October last year, which I thought was going to explode when we defaulted. But we have had the first couple closes above 4,200 in a while, but we're still coming to that consolidation point. So it's going to be interesting to see what the next move is.
Really good opportunity here. I think as traders, these are the times where we want to be patient. But what I really want to point out when we look at this chart here is all the checks to that low trend line Jack has here, that yellow low trend line Jack's got going on. When you're trading and you find yourself maybe struggling, or you find yourself in an awkward position, or you're not sure whether you should take a trade or not, setting up trends, looking at channels, things of that nature. Now we have the daily, or I believe this is the daily. We're going all the way back like a year here,
yeah.
But you can look at chart, you can create trends like this on any time frame chart. And that's what I do. I think I've talked about it a lot, this idea of creating a channel to trade in, and they can be range bound. They can be trending higher. They can be trending lower. But what you really want to do is, if you find yourself struggling and you can't find, hey, I'm getting in the middle, I can't figure out my risk. These are the opportunities when you come check low sides or high sides of channels. Those are areas to start to look for an opportunity. And I'm not saying it's going to revert back inside that channel. It could be a breakout section too. Obviously, you're going to watch volume. You're going to watch a number of factors when the market's approaching the extremes. And, basic principles of volume, as it says, if market is moving in a direction, volume continues to come in, look for direction to continue. But those are times where you can kind of look for a little bit tighter on the risk, and then potentially you'll have a better risk to reward ratio. So things you can look at all the time. And again, it's not necessarily a entry point of saying go long or short, but rather there's room to look for an opportunity to limit that risk when you get to trades like that.
Yeah, I got to say, personally, I am going to miss this triangle. It's come to its end. I wish it well, and we got to look at what's coming next. I still think the 4,200 is a super important level if that becomes a support. Obviously, I think the all-time high was around 46 something, as I recall. I could look on there, but I'm looking at 3 different screens at once right now. This has been super organized, and I love to see it. On the other hand, we go to the NASDAQ today. Give me a moment here.
Little different setup.
Little different. It's been rising higher. It's even breaking above that. The NASDAQ has been super top weighted in some ways. The big players in AI and NVIDIA have been holding it up. I think that there have been some crazy percentage of the stocks in NASDAQ are near their lows for the year, while the stock index is making its highs. This is not the one that I trade. I stick to my nice triangle on the ES, but this is certainly something that, you know what, everywhere you look, you got channels going on. But how high can this fly, Dan? Do you think we're waiting for this to rotate back down? It seems shaky to me.
There's a lot of concern out there right now. There's a lot of questions going on. Obviously, AI is a great topic to be looking at, especially when it comes to the NASDAQ in the future there. But in reality, it really comes down to, just trade what you see. Pay attention
Exactly.
to volume. That's the thing, obviously we got to put on our two different hats. You wear your investment hat, right? You're thinking long-term, and then you wear your day trading hat and you're thinking, hey, what's happening here today? And I think the thing you want to look at is monitoring that volume. What's volume telling you? Is the volume continuing to come in, right? We just talked about it looking at the S&P chart, right? Basic principles of volume. If we continue to see strong up days, with good volume coming in, then yeah, there's opportunity for the market to continue. If we start to see that volume lag off, don't look for those big, huge breakouts. Maybe things are slowing up a little bit.
Yeah, well put. Just trade what you see. We like to prognosticate sometimes because it's good to look at those longer term trends, but ultimately, you're not investors, or at least not when you're doing this right now. And
Exactly.
definitely don't ask us for investing advice, because it was a tough 2022 for me, Dan. What about you?
2022 is tough, but 2023 is on the mend.
Oh, 2023 is great, but really getting a lesson. We always talk to traders about, if you impair your account by a big percent, you have to make a much bigger percent of it back. So 2023, I am way outperforming the S&P 500. Just don't ask about last year's performance.
I just looked at my stuff last night, and little sigh of relief. Almost halfway through the year to see where we're at so far.
So Dan, that kind of goes into, we just talked about losses. That's one type of loss you can incur. You can lose money by buying a security at one price and selling it at another disadvantageous price. That's the one everyone thinks about. But there's also a lot of other costs that go into trading. And we kind of wanted to talk about this in the lens of, we had an announcement from Top Step this week, Dan, which was our compliance person.
Keep your first 10,000 and then 90-10 split after that. That's pretty awesome.
Next 10,000. So
or next.
Yeah, that is a really good split, especially because we'll get into later what the splits were like when we were working at prop shops. But first, people might find it more interesting to talk about trading costs in general that maybe you're not thinking about. So Dan, you do more active trading in futures than I do at this point. What are you looking at as far as, what are your bare minimum costs that you're incurring?
Technology fees. That's kind of how I look at it, right? My computers, my internet, some of the softwares that I'm paying for. I do have a statistician I work with monthly. There are fees included in that. So to me, there's a couple levels you got to think about. I've said this in the past, and I'll continue to say this again. If you're going to make trading a career, if it's something you're going to be looking at all the time, I cannot stress enough, a good work environment. Cell phones, fine. Getting out of a position or checking on the market, by all means, I'm not against that. I was raised in a household that said even to do AOL Instant Messenger, AIM as we call it, you had to be hardwired. No such thing as laptops growing up. Every computer was hardwired. I think my dad was 10 years behind getting Wi-Fi. It felt like we never had Wi-Fi in the house. Everything with computers were hardwired. Even I remember going to college, it would have been 2007, 8-ish, something like that. I was a kid that went to college with a hardwired cord. Internet was a thing. The rooms, the dorm, I was about to say barracks rooms. The dorm rooms had Wi-Fi and internet, but nope. I got sent to school with a Ethernet cord.
So I'll date myself there. I went to college. A lot changed just a couple years earlier, I think 2005. And everything was plugged in. We got our TV through an Ethernet cord plugged in. I watched a lot of Law and Order because that's all they had. They had TNT. So
we had 16 channels, and you had a cable wire coming through. But to bring it back, some of the costs, right? So your technology costs.
I have an aside here, by the way, on the technology costs. It's actually fortuitous. Somebody in the comments a while back was talking about, first we got DA asking, would you guys know if we can get the coaching session that occurred today? Yeah, I can check. Yeah, dial-up. I dealt with dial-up way back in the day. Actually,
I remember dial-up.
Shout out in case my mom's listening. The family computer, I don't know if I've ever told you about this trauma, was in my room. So the one big gateway computer was where everyone came to do their computing. So that was fun. But new technology, somebody in the comments a while back was asking us, we were talking about, Dan, you were talking about your two internets, and somebody was asking if you'd ever used VPS for trading.
I
Okay.
remember that.
The virtual computer. And at the time, a few weeks ago, my answer would have been no. But here's a little secret. If you're watching this right now, we are producing this on a virtual computer. And there are some advantages to that you should look into. They can be super powerful, these cloud computers. Like, the reason we're using it is because my laptop would explode right now if I was trying to run this streaming software on it, right? But also you can access it. You talk about always being able to get in or out of a position. You're talking about Wi-Fi that could go out. Your internet at home could come out. Well, you could connect remotely to one of these computers anywhere. Your computer goes down, jump on your phone, whatever else you do. It's very interesting technology. I think there's all sorts of different cost levels, and it's something that I'm going to look into more and more.
We used to use a VPS. The more I think about it, not VPN, they're free information.
Yeah.
VPN's a virtual network, but VPS is a actual like computer in the cloud.
Yeah, let me explain the difference, because I'm not a huge tech guy, so this was newer to me. I've used VPN. I had to download the VPN when I went to China so I could check my emails because of the good party over there. VPN is great too. VPS is actually a virtual, it is a computer in the cloud in a data center somewhere that you access like a remote desktop. So when I sign into it, it looks like a Windows desktop, but it's not real. But it has, crazy.
It's funny because I remember when that came up and I didn't remember exactly what it was, but now you bringing this back up and kind of explaining, I do remember we used a cloud computer. Our risk software was developed in the mid 90s at my old prop firm. And it was initially built on Windows 95. And they upgraded it to, I believe it was Windows XP. And so in like 2014 or 15, Windows XP got completely phased out. And it was a 7-figure cost to upgrade it to the current Windows, to get our risk software set to the current Windows. And the bosses were a hard no on that one. And we found, someone said you can get a virtual computer and run XPS on it, Windows XPS. And so we ran all of our risk software off of a virtual computer.
Nice. What was the Windows everyone hated? I forgot about that. I was always
XPS.
XPS. Okay.
I think it was the XPS. I think everyone hated it, but that was the big one for a while. So anyhow, circling back. So the stuff you got to think about, right? I like a secondary internet. To me, it makes sense. At the end of the day, no matter what happens when we're trading, we are solely responsible for our actions. If we're trading on a poor internet connection, we have to accept the consequences that come with it. If we're trading, wherever we're trading, those consequences fall on us. And we want to make sure if it's $150 extra a month in an internet that gets you something that's secure. Like I've always said, I've got a separate internet that runs underneath this desk here. And my trading computer is hardwired. So that is fully hardwired. It gives me the most comfort and confidence in my system. So internet, your computer, if you're coming into this and you're looking to make a career out of this, invest in a solid computer. It can be a laptop and a secondary monitor. You can be into these computers now for under $1,000, probably even way less than that. And you can have a really strong, solid computer, and making sure that that computer is solely focused for trading. That's always been something that we were told back at the prop firm, Jack, I think you guys were too. You had your internet computer, you had your trading computer. So you had like a secondary. For us, it was like we got an old desktop that got its separate monitor to check emails and look at the news and, scroll Facebook and Twitter.
On the charting software, I think that's actually for everyone out there. I mean, how much you spend on trading technology, it's sort of like golf, or what are other expensive hobbies people pour golf or like audio visual or stuff like that, where you could spend as much as you want, but how much you spend is a decision that should be based on what is your scale? What are you trying to do here? Do you need, how much is trading technologies now, Dan?
A few thousand a month.
So do you need to spend a few thousand a month on TT and have two high quality computers and a virtual computer and stuff like that? I mean, maybe. I don't know. Maybe some of you guys are BSDs, so to speak. You can fill in the word there, but I won't. I think I selected the stream was okay for kids. But the decision that I wouldn't skimp on is just like having a clean computer for it. Like you said, like I would have a separate trading box if I were doing it.
I think it makes sense. So simple investments in the retail world. And I'll tell you, it's cheaper than going to a prop shop somewhere else.
Yeah, we'll get into that.
Um,
2G connections. Yeah, I'm sure there's as much as you want because I think you can just scale it. I'm just responding to the comments here, by the way.
I got 1 gig here for my computer. Lightning fast. I've never had 1 gig in my own home.
They lie
and
so
it is
hard on
lightning.
those. I've been testing it. I apparently had the 400 from Comcast. Shout out to Comcast, and I have never seen anything close to that. Maybe 100 for download speeds is the highest I've ever gotten there, but cool stuff.
I got that AT&T fiber optic coming in.
Nice. I mean, before we get to the payout structures at prop shops versus what's happening now, I mean, the other things you all know about as far as costs, right? You have margin, interest, you have commissions, and that's another place too where it depends on your scale. I mean, what does a CME membership cost now, Dan?
Depends on which one you want. I think you can go as low as to rent them a few $100s a month. If you want to own, I think you're in 9,000 on the low end and 400,000 on the high end.
So what Dan's describing here is that you can get better commission rates by paying fees to the CME. Now, if you're trading outrights, unless you're doing some crazy large scalping strategy, it probably doesn't make sense. I used to be a CME member because we were trading spreads where each unit you would sell one bond and buy 10 or 11 futures. So it added up really quick. You'd be trading thousands of futures a day. So that made a big difference.
Yeah, and I don't think many retail traders out there it's worthwhile to them. But a membership, they're going extinct soon.
Yeah. Somebody is asking about, and maybe someone can help in the comments too, is asking about, do you know what's connection, what hardware you need for a PC? Maybe someone can answer. I've always had the computers provided for me. I wish I knew more about these things. I really do.
Yeah, I can help a little bit. A high-end graphics card. That's going to speed up your visualization on things. That's really important. A good size CPU and memory, that makes a huge difference. Really, I think the best way to go about it when it comes to picking a computer, if you don't know the details, look for a gaming laptops. Those MSIs, I think some of them are. Lenovo's got some good ones. Alienware. There's a number of them out there you can get for a decent price. Those gaming laptops are designed for interactive, high speed, and good engagement. And the screen resolution, I think, is pretty good on them too. I've got a custom built computer here that was custom built essentially based off of gaming that I use for trading.
And Dan, that, my friend, is why NVIDIA is worth $1 trillion as of today or yesterday.
Between friends, Jack, I have more NVIDIA graphics cards in a box in a closet in this room than I want to admit. When we cleared out our old office, we had 50 of them. I somehow ended up with like half of them.
Well, maybe we'll raffle those off at some point. Dan and I will be in the alley behind the board of trade, and we'll be giving those out at some point. Cool. Yeah, so we've gone over the commissions, gone over the equipment you need. Besides that, there's stuff that doesn't cost money, like just having a nice place to work. That's a good one.
Yeah, I think also that you may bring a good point, Jack. They're like a good chair. A good, comfortable chair to sit in. That's a good investment to make. Comfortable desk, comfortable space. You can kind of see behind me, my desk's kind of a mess. But just investment in a good couple pens, some sticky notes, some scratch paper to be writing on, little things like that, having that and, stockpiling it. I'm a big fan of overbuying so that if I run out, I'm not running around looking for something when I need it. I have stacks of sticky notes, stacks of legal pads. I've got cards everywhere. I'm always taking notes as I'm going. Those types of investments, menial, but it keeps you focused on your trading because you have everything you need locally.
Also, yeah, free information in the YouTube comments. Feel free to pitch whatever you want in there. Well, as long as our rules on pitching things are no pitching crypto, no pitching, what else? I mean, no weapons, no drugs, nothing like that. Everything else is fine. But no competitors, they'll get me in trouble. I should have had that one first. So Dan, now it's time to dig deep. Talk about prop shops a little bit. Because, I think that a lot of people I think people want to work at a prop shop sometimes as sort of a, career aspiration and kind of that feather in your cap of, you're a professional trader when you're in a prop shop, or that thought process, which
For sure.
I think it's a little bit, it's a little bit misguided in that you shouldn't really care about just titles like those, but there are pros and cons, and the cons are pretty much all cost, and we can kind of go into that. So Dan, when you were trading at a prop shop, what was your payment structure like?
So it
Payout.
varied based off of how much you made every month. And it varied off of your expectations. So we came in and they set an expectation of revenue that we're, amount of money we were supposed to make. So my initial, when I first started, was about between 25 and 30% cut. If you were to look at it, we did it as a full pot. So any of the guys that were trading the same product, they fell into a pot, and certain guys got bigger chunks. I was on the lower end when I first started, but close to the 25% of what I made is what I pocketed after I paid my desk fees. The desk fees came out of my 25%. So it wasn't like the first, I think my desk fees were 10,000 a month.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like the first 10,000 I made went to my desk fee. It was 25%. So I had if I made 10,000, I got 2,500 of that. 2,500 of that went into my desk fees. So if you do the math, you can start to think about how much you got to make in a month just to cover desk fees before you're putting money in your pocket.
Yeah. When you get hired at a trading firm, and Dan's right about it being purely performance based, where you'll probably get a salary that is, depending on the place, somewhere between just getting by and just enough so the government doesn't get them for labor practices, right?
Yeah, I had a base salary. We won't even go into that number. It was not. It was. It wasn't helpful. And yeah, I just see your comment here. Free information. Some people got more of the pot than others. Absolutely. Some people were doing, close to 7 figures a month, and some were, maybe just barely touching 6 figures a month. And the goal and every prop shop's different. Some is very individual based. We worked as a team. That was the incentive, to work as a team to support others, for the big guys to kind of educate the younger guys. And so everyone's success worked together, because I'd also been in places where, someone found a strategy that was working really, really well in the short term, and they didn't want to share that information. And it impacted the prop firm as a whole, because one person found a strategy that's working and they didn't want to share it because they wanted their numbers to be higher than everyone else's. Whereas when you were working in a pot, as they say, sharing that information, you become more of a team aspect. That was the intention of the last firm I was with.
And there might be prop shops, and in fact, I'm sure there are. I think there's different levels of prop shops where there might be places that are essentially just offering you a little bit of help with the margin and a place to sit, and they may not be giving salaries and stuff like that. I would be aware of any place like that. I think what you have to think about with the cost, I'll go into what my costs were there. and whether it's worth it is what are you getting for that? And in the case of where I traded, it was a very, very large percentage of any success that I had came from what was being offered. So in that case, it was similar to Dan, where I probably had desk fees of 10 to 12 grand a month. And then about 30%, 25, 30%, and it would escalate as you made more. And to that salary thing, also, they give the low salaries too, just to kind of like weed people out. I think there's a passive aggressive thing where, in my experience, it was usually the big high flyers that got fired in a crazy way because they're the ones that would go out and just lose an S load of money. Whereas the people that just were never having much success, they just got weeded out by themselves because if you weren't making any money or just covering your desk fees, it was a pretty unglamorous lifestyle. You were just kind of doing all this work and just getting by. And at some point, you'd be like, this, I got to be building up some other skills. But,
Jack, you're spot on. I'm glad I kind of forgot about that, but you're right. When the big money guys, they were also the big money losers and the winners. They had the bigger churn, and you'd see them bouncing around a little bit more than the rest. That middle of the road trader, they were the ones that pretty much stayed loyal to the same firm, stayed with them for as long as they really wanted until they had a different opportunity come up. I think it's important to note, the difference with being in a prop shop and doing this in your own world, retail, financing yourself with something like Top Step is, every dollar is pretty much a green check for you. You can work on your own time. For us, when we were in the prop firm, that's your livelihood, and you were putting in, and it wasn't like, I could go try, like now I can look at the markets for 2-3 hours a day. I can have a great day, great week, great month. And I'm not, overwhelming myself, where back in the day it was, I was in the office by 5:45, 6 a.m. I'd leave at about 3:30. I was the one that lived close. So I would rush home. I lived on LaSalle Street, just north of the Board of Trade by exactly 1 mile. And I would sprint home. I'd get upstairs, I'd fire up my computer, and then I'd start watching positions. And I'd usually watch the positions from that 5 o'clock open until about 8 o'clock at night. Someone else would log in from 8 to 11. And then someone would be monitoring throughout the overnight session, and any, abrupt market change, they wouldn't really mess. You guys had night guys, Jack. We were a little smaller. We didn't have a night guy. We had someone keeping. Yeah, we didn't have that. We had one guy that kept an eye on things in the overnight. He was trading a night strategy, and he would just call and go, this position, bonds just moved, a handle. They moved 20 ticks. That was our wake-up calls, and we'd all hop on.
Question. Were options trading around the clock? Like, what were you guys trading overnight?
Yeah, options. So we were really big back then with the Asian Open. China was really impactful on the bonds. So you would see pretty intense moves right on that Asian Open. So we usually had about half the firm on at about 7 o'clock at night watching those numbers.
Yeah. So to kind of end this thing on cost, I'd say if you're ever interested in a prop shop, definitely explore what they are offering as far as, and it can be a great decision if you can get the job. It's a very hard job, but it can be very rewarding in some ways too, financially or otherwise, is that for that extra money, it's the technology. And by technology, I mean proprietary technology. The place I was at had more developers than traders because we were operating all on, I'd say what I was doing was less trading and more learning the ins and outs of how to fine tune a proprietary system, right? So if they offer that, they offer in-house quants, they offer equipment, they offer crazy. Now I haven't been there for 10 years, so maybe not 10 years.
I think that firm is even probably even offering even more now, Jack.
Yeah, well, that firm offers neck massages and free lunch every day and all sorts of stuff. But they extract it from you in different ways, Dan. They'll always get it. But yeah, the technology, the support, and then a massive amount of margin, like leverage, right? You're going to be able to trade positions at a prop shop that I would not feel comfortable trading by myself.
I mean, I sit here and think about it like I've been out of that world for 6.5 years now. And to put on, what we would just call like, see what happened style trade, throwing on 50 bonds and seeing if we can make 10 ticks on it. That was a lot. To do that now, I couldn't imagine it. It's so much more risk than I'd want to take. And we were doing 50 bonds outright, and we were like, we'll cover lunch this week.
Yeah.
It's like, it doesn't work like that anymore.
The last thing, someone made a good comment there, is that the last thing that I overlooked that they provide is, and this is probably the most important, maybe tied with the technology or the margin, is the knowledge you get from the people you're with. I mean, they teach you how to trade. I mean, that's how I learned, and really the only way I know how was by spending all day, doing positions at night for the people who are the day traders. And that is invaluable, but there are places, and this is what I would make my end thing, encourage you all to seek out just communities of traders, or if you can find someone that's better than you. It's not just learning. I don't think anyone online is I don't know if there's any live trading out there or something that's going to be super profitable. My thing's always been like, if you had a killer strategy, why would you share it? I wouldn't. But you can still learn a ton from watching people, if you find people you respect that live trade or host things, of just gaining the knowledge of what they're looking at or how they're framing things out. And I do think there is value there.
I think you're right. There's a ton of value in watching traders trade. I think what's important to remember is if you are in these live rooms or you're with these groups that they are, their sole focus is to, show trading every single day. Their job is to put trades on. It's not necessarily, always going to be focused on the risk. They got to trade to maintain some engagement. They're going to talk about it, good and bad trades. I think most of them out there that I've ever seen, they're pretty honest in saying like, that was a bad trade, but we took it, we learned from it, we go to the next one. But at the end of the day, remember, watching other traders, mentoring other traders, working with other traders, doesn't matter how, everyone has a different appetite for risk. So take what you learn from them and attempt to apply it to your own system. Don't try and copy their system and bring it over. I've always said, Jack and I can sit here. We can put on an opposite trade at the exact same price. Both of us can make money. We can put the exact same trade on at the exact same trade price, and both of us one may win, one may lose. It's about how you manage your risk. It's about what your appetite for risk is in that trade. There are so many factors involved. It's not just, hey, they said this was a good entry, so I got in. You got to make sure it fits your system.
Yeah, you can't just copy things. I sat next to someone who was probably a multi 7-figure a year trader and saw their positions on my P&L monitor. So
you can't copy it.
It's there, but the way that those people do it is magic. Like the really amazing traders, the way they read order flow, the way that they will dump out of positions when no one else does, or add to winners when no one else does, or put in the extra thing. It's not something that you can necessarily copy, but you can get better if you put your mind to it. So that's probably where I'll leave it. Let me make sure there's not any last minute questions coming in. Cool. Yeah. Check out the Discord. Check out any Discord. Just honestly talk to people. I don't think there's anything worse for your psyche than just trading alone all the time. It's maddening, the hermit trading.
I can't do it. When I'm more active than normal, I'm on the phone with trading friends all the time. I'm on the phone with Michael Patak here at Top Step a lot when we're trading. He and I used to Zoom for hours every morning and trade together.
Is he slacking me while he's Zooming you? I don't know how he does these both things.
Yep. I mean, it helps to have someone to talk to. You know, he and I trade very differently. But just having, someone that when you spend time with someone, they start to learn how you trade and you start to learn how they trade. And you can recognize when, hey, that's not your trade. What are you doing? That's not for you. Or you've said this for the last 7 days and it hasn't worked. Why are you trying it again?
Yeah. Well, with that, Dan, getting ready to walk outside for the first time today. So
Go
I'll
get out, enjoy
enjoy
it. Have a nice weekend.
Yeah, we got some big announcements coming from Top Step in the next couple of weeks. They will be, for once, we're not teasing something that won't be big. It'll be big. Hope you're around for that. I think on Top Step TV, when we get that launched, we're going to announce it there. So, Dan, always a pleasure to see you.
Likewise.
Okay, we'll see you next week. Stay safe. Trade smaller than you think you need to. Namaste. Trade well.